Hello and welcome to our review for the Storm Fate. The Fate will release on November 18th. It's another Belmo ball, so it's in the signature line. Pre-orders are up and available on Bowler's Mart. The link for that is in the description. Also want to make you aware of my new YouTube memberships with all kinds of different perks to check out, including members-only videos and early access. So if you're interested, just click on the join button below the video to browse through the options. We're on the house shot for this one as we look at the graph. The Fate is a shiny symmetric ball, so everyday league use is going to be its wheelhouse. Volume here is closer to 25 or 26 mils, so it's not wide open, but still very playable. Tech details are the REX Pearl cover with the new Reactogloss finish. Yes, I know, another REX Pearl ball. And then the appropriately named F8 core. F8, Fate, get it? And it looks to me like a modified booster core that we had in the Rocket series a few years ago. It's symmetric, of course, 252 RG, so that's the same value from the piston core that was in the Pro Motion and the first trend. And an 053 differential, one of the biggest diff values we have in anything right now, so it's going to flare a lot. Angel's up first, information in the sidebars. As always, her personal specs are in the description. And disclaimer right up front, we both really like this ball a lot. I try to maintain objectivity no matter what our personal opinions are because ball reaction is subjective. Some people might really like a ball that others hate, but ball reaction is just ball reaction no matter how you feel about it. To get you in the right headspace, the Fate is a stronger original Wolverine. It's got the same shape, same overall optics, just more strength due to the cover difference. The cores are even very similar from a number standpoint, so at a very basic level, what you have is, in the Fate, is a Wolverine that is more stable, handles volume better, and blends the lane better. Yes, please. It also has very strong Spectre vibes. We'll actually be using that as a comparison later. The Fate rolls a little earlier and even gets even a bit more dig or traction, but I think this is by far the closest thing that we've got to the Spectre now. It's a pretty simple reaction though. It's rolly and pretty blendy. Like the Wolverine and Spectre, it's firm but not exactly quick on friction. It hooks a decent amount but rolls and walks off friction. It doesn't jerk or check or jump. It obviously isn't lazy in the oil either. It's very controllable. She can play all over the lane with it. She can put it out into the friction and get blend, or she can get it to actually dig in the oil. This is going to make it wildly good as a league ball, dare I say Zen 2.0, and something that should be considered for sport patterns as well, if not on the fresh at the box surface anyway. I know there are those that don't like factory shine, but as controllable and blendy as this ball is out of the box, you might actually give it a shot. The Spectre and Zen are also very controllable and usable with the shine on them, so I'd take a look at that at least. The amount of room she has and the amount of angles she can play says more than I can, and anyone that watches my videos regularly knows that's a mouthful. It has length and is smooth for lower speeds and higher rev rates. It still has enough punch for lower rev rates, but I think high speeds that aren't accompanied by a higher rev rate might have some issues with this one out of the box. It's pretty glossy, very, very easy down the lane, and pretty blendy, so you might want to take the shine off or just look at a different ball altogether. If you throw it 18 plus but are two-handed, this is going to be a god ball. It'll be great for two-handers, period. This is a Belmo ball after all. I think we've seen enough by now to get the point across, so we'll move on. Comparing it to the Spectre, we got new footage for both of us, and it's really easy to see the similarities. I think the Fate is earlier and possibly even a bit more blendy, but where the Spectre could sometimes be a little too slow, the Fate improves on that. It still obviously could be a little too slow itself, but the extra traction keeps it in play more often. We're obviously very disappointed about the Spectre situation. It was my favorite ball while I could throw it. We've kept them, of course, and the Fate really thrills us both now to feel like we almost have it back, where it's similar to the point that we're very happy and content. Highly recommend the Fate as a Spectre replacement, of course, and going to highly recommend the Fate anyway. Everyone wants to see this, so I'm just going to go on ahead and put it in the review, the Phase 5. The P5 has a slightly stronger core, definitely weaker cover, so while it rolls earlier, it's longer and sharper. The traction level difference to us actually throwing the ball feels different. The P5 revs up well, but is actually easier down the lane, believe it or not. I know it's a little tough to see on video, but most things are. The difference shows itself more in moving around. Moving left into the oil shows the P5 getting a fair amount longer than it is from straighter, and while most things will get easier length when moving inside on a house shot, the Fate still stays more stable. It maintains its length better when moving left to right. It's not as boomy on the dry, and it gets more traction in the oil, so again, smoother and more stable, but the traction difference is honestly hard to tell on video. Realistically, the Fate just looks like a smoother P5. Moving to the left side, this was a bunch of fun once I got the ball figured out, but the angles and speeds were tricky at first. I really wanted this ball to replace my Spectre, so I used a slightly different layout than normal. This is 4.5 by 2 rather than 5 by 2 or 4 by 2. My Spectre was 4 by 2, but the Fate has both a stronger core and stronger cover, so I went a little weaker on the pin at 4.5 to somewhat offset the difference, and we were successful. It also reminds me a lot of my Cosmos, just obviously not as strong. Very rolly and stable, very continuous later when I actually start throwing it well. But one big key thing for me that the Spectre gave me that virtually no other ball can is a little push in the middle, which I didn't figure out or just really didn't trust with the Fate until a bit later. It's something I can actually roll and fade without having to circle the middle or focus on keeping my speed up, which isn't an intuitive thing as a lefty. The left side plays quite a bit flatter than the right side, so if you don't get it left of 6 down lane, you're just not holding the pocket unless you launch it, and then it's going to be flat. Usually in order to get the ball down the lane and then back through the pins the right way, you have to roll it, but get around it, but also get it out to 5 quick. It's just a catch-22 nightmare a lot of the time. You could see that giving the Fate too much room and or being firm with it really isn't the play, which is very odd over here. Like I said, you usually have to just send it left to keep it off the nose. I was expecting it to be smooth, but not quite this smooth. So once I relaxed and realized I didn't have to yeet it or pay so much attention to my speed, the floodgates open. I think it's really important to show this process, even though the ball looks awful for a while before I get it figured out, because sometimes all it takes is some patience, troubleshooting, and adjustments. Lots of people would have said it sucks by now and posted it for sale at a big loss on SRGBBFS, but as you can see, I got it figured out, and now I can't miss. I was even able to move back to the left and get lined up and throw darts. I just got softer and let the ball roll, and I finished filming with 12 or 13 in a row. I also have the world now, when earlier it looked like I had nothing, and the adjustment to get here was very, very small and simple. The Spectre was a virtual cheat code for me, and the Fate is very, very close to the same. It gives me a bunch of confidence to stay soft with it and let it work. I can get inside it, roll it at the spot, and I have an absolute trough to aim at. It's like being right-handed again, and it's glorious. This ball has delivered me to the promised land of the legendary lefty wall I've heard so much about, but have never actually experienced before. Staffer hype is turned way up on this one. The left side's miserable and depressing, and this is the most fun I've had bowling lefty in months, so I'm just going to go with it. Time will tell, of course, but we don't typically have stuff be good out of the box and then fall off. There have been plenty that were wonky out of the box that we got adjusted and figured out, like the Night Road. That ball goes everywhere with me now, but I can't remember a ball I loved out of the box that ended up ultimately disappointing me. Speaking of the Night Road, let's check that comparison out since they are the same cover stock in REX Pearl. The difference is, of course, that the Night core is a lot weaker, 257 RG and an 046 diff in 15 pounds, so it won't be near as early. We're looking at the 4-inch pin to pap first. That's the first one I drilled, and I'll add in the 5-inch momentarily so that we get a look at the comparison with both a stronger and weaker layout than what I have on the Fate. Despite a lower differential, I think both Night Roads are faster on the back end than the Fate, and that's due to the core helping it down the lane easier. Remember that differential works both ways. If you have a strong cover that's getting a lot of flare from the core, that's going to make it earlier because it's getting more traction earlier. More flare only gives you a strong back-end motion if you can get the ball down the lane in the first place. This is why max flare layouts aren't automatically max back-end layouts. A 4-inch pin to pap is a pretty strong layout, but on this weak of a core, it's already going to get the length I need, so it still produces a long and fairly quick motion on the back end, but that also offers me some stability in the mid lane at the same time due to the layout strength. That kind of balances the high length the core wants to get. Looking now at the 5-inch pin to pap, it's marginally longer and somewhat sharper than the 4-inch pin to pap. Weaker layout means it doesn't start revving or rolling as quickly. It gets further down the lane before it starts to hook. So rather than using energy earlier to start hooking, it has it all available for a bigger back end move. I do of course sacrifice some mid lane control. It's not stabilizing as early, it's quicker on friction, so it can be a little jerky at times, but that's great for if I need to get inside and have length and recovery on drier lanes or transition. The 4-inch can be a little too early and slow sometimes, so there's always a trade-off, and ultimately always a reason or a specific use for something. Don't just buy a new ball to throw it in the same place you throw all your other stuff just to be disappointed or say it sucks if it doesn't do exactly what they do. Play around, try different things, you might find a real purpose for it. Remember, bowling balls are tools. You pull a 7-iron out of the bag when you need a 7-iron, and unless you're 10 cup, you got to think about bowling balls the same way. Finally, the Spectre from my side as well. I used it a bunch in the few short months I could, so it's a little tamer and slower than it was out of the box, but I think you can still see the familiarity. It's rare to see such blend and control out of something shiny no matter what the cover is. This ball throws back to stuff like the Marvel Pearl, while the Fate mostly resembles it, but also has flashes of the Idle Pearl. Slightly weaker core in the Fate, fair bit stronger cover, but REX is really clean for how much it actually hooks, so if you're looking for an Idle Pearl replacement, the Fate isn't exactly it either, but it's close. I have to stay nice and easy on the fresh with the Spectre too. It still looks pretty good though, and like the Fate, I can stay relaxed and smooth and just roll it. The Spectre ultimately is a little longer and a little bit more responsive, but they're very familiar to each other. Once again, the Fate releases on November 18th. Bowler's Mart link is in the description to pick one up. I'll have a couple more comparisons coming, but I stuffed the review pretty good, so hopefully I've given you enough information to get started with. Thanks as always to my outstanding Patreon members and Discord community, in addition now to all my new YouTube members. Thank you for watching, and may the strikes be with you.